Aerophobia.
Lots of people have a fear of flying, probably far more than the 20% I'm talking about.
Straight away, we have the callers waiting for you, and Rose is in Harpenden. Good afternoon, Rose.
Hello there, hi.
I'm fine. It's nice to have you on the show, although you're flying tomorrow, I hear, and one member of your family is a bit nervous. Anyway, you're on the line now to Mark Shields, Rose.
Hi, Rose.
Hello there. Hi, Mark. Hi there. I have a son who has a fear of flying. I'm not quite sure it's a phobia, and it doesn't happen all the time.
Right.
For instance, last year we flew to Thailand. So that was an 8-hour flight, and he was absolutely fine. In fact, I had got him some drugs, inverted comma, to try and help him through that, but he was absolutely fine. We're actually flying tomorrow morning, and it's probably a 10-hour flight, and he was up all night last night worrying about it.
Okay,
so well, a bit short notice. But,
no, that's okay. That's okay. So you're in what we call phase 2, if you like, which is with an impending flight immediately. In your case, the first thing when we become afraid in any situation, and we're talking about airplanes today, but the breathing, our breathing becomes affected. It's driven by stress hormones, and the levels of carbon dioxide and oxygen become out of sync, if you like, unaligned. And that creates more fear, and people start to panic and sometimes hyperventilate. So the most powerful technique is what we call a diaphragmatic breathing technique. The technique is to breathe in through the nose, a nice deep breath in through the nose, hold at the top of the breath for 3 seconds, and breathe out through the mouth for 5. Now, if you do that for long enough, probably a few minutes, that imbalance of carbon dioxide and oxygen will become realigned. So effectively what you're doing is you're pushing the stress back, and the physiology of that is foolproof. So the stress can't affect him when he does that technique. The second technique that can be used in conjunction with that, is something that listeners will, I'm sure, have heard of. It's got a number of names. It's called thought field therapy, the emotional freedom technique, and I just call it tapping. To keep this really simple, we have stress points on the body, and by tapping, a bit like acupuncture, by tapping on those stress points, we release fear, we release emotion, and we calm down as well. And those tapping points for fear, so to keep this really simple for you, the first tapping point is above the eye, on the eyebrow. The second tapping point is under the eye. The third tapping point is above the lip. That's there, that's right, yeah. The fourth tapping point is below the lip. The fifth tapping point is just below the collarbone. And a very powerful one for flying is just on the little finger. So if he finds himself, all you literally do is take 2 fingers from your opposite hand and just tap, probably 20 taps on each point, go round the 6, come back to the top and tap again.
Why is it that people suffer with this awful thing of aerophobia then?
Well, I think the first thing to say is that nobody was born with aerophobia, okay? We learned the habit, and we could have learned that through a bad flight, watching a bad film. A lot of people are getting quite worked up about, obviously, the 9/11 attacks, global terrorism. So we've learned it. So using hypnosis, for want of a better word, and it's probably the greatest therapy to use, and some NLP, that will allow you to unlearn the process in exactly the same way you learned it. So with hypnotherapy, you simply uninstall the program that represents fear of flying, and you install a new one in their unconscious minds. Well,
Paul is from Dunstable. Hello, Paul.
Hi.
Good afternoon. You're on the line to Mark Shields.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, sorry to trouble you. I'm just listening to your programme, and my wife has a fear of turbulence. It's normally when there's clear air turbulence, and she's got nothing to focus herself on. The ironic thing is she's a cabin crew trainer.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and the problem, I think, arose when she was flying many years ago out of Japan, and they accidentally flew through a tornado.
Okay, I mean, there's a number of things that she can do. I mean, there's a number of I don't like to use the word therapies, but strategies, let's call them. Hypnotherapy and NLP are both very good for that. So in exactly the same way, that connection and association with fear, this time it's with turbulence. So she could work outside of, in her own time on that with some professional people. And they would disassociate that fear for her.
Would this be regression therapy?
No, it wouldn't. It would be, if we call these neurological pathways, and they're caused by situations that happen. So she's got a direct association with turbulence and anxiety.
Yeah.
It's almost, you could draw a line, and at one end put turbulence and at the other put anxiety. And what we do is we change that. So we literally, we call it a submodality shift, and it won't mean anything to anybody, but we change that relationship with fear with her. So and so unconsciously, turbulence would no longer mean fear. So there's that she can do. I would recommend she did, and also the two techniques that we've talked about on air. Certainly the breathing technique and the tapping, they would both help her immediately calm down.
Now, Mark, I know you've got a fascinating website. The whole website is, but there's one thing on it which people who have got a problem really ought to look at, and that's that film of the man that you that contacted you, I think, originally, but he hadn't flown for 20 years. That's an amazing film for anybody who's got a fear to watch, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great example for any of the listeners that suffer in some way, even if they just have a fear of flying. This was a young man that hadn't flown in 20 years. He was under pressure at work to fly. He couldn't. So I put him through a program, which I'll explain in a minute. And he got on the plane. We did probably 6 sessions together, and it was all filmed live on television. So not only did he have to deal with his fear, he had to do it live on the cameras, and he did extremely well. There's about 5 minutes of that on the website, and I think it'll inspire a lot of people and it'll help them at the same time.
Lots of things we haven't managed to get onto yet that we wanted to talk about, but the most important thing is, for people with a fear, how can they themselves get some sort of help?
Well, there's a number of things they can do. They can contact an airline that will run a day's course for them and probably finish with a flight. Okay, so that's a great option, and they normally cost around £1,000–1,500, but are successful. So there's that. Yeah. If you can contact a company like ours, there's many of them out there, and they will run specific programs for fear of flying, and they will use techniques such as hypnotherapy, NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, which again is an unconscious change solution, a rapid change solution. Another type of strategy is called cognitive behavioural therapy. So if we work on the premise that what we think directly impacts on how we feel and how we behave, that type of strategy and that type of therapy challenges that and helps us get over the fear as well. That's very good. And finally, there's some mouthful here, desensualization. There, I got it out. Strategy whereby over a period of time, people just expose themselves a bit at a time to the phobia. So they might travel to the airport and watch the planes. They might go into the lounge there. They might watch some films, read some books, and gradually just progress further and further until they're ready to fly.
And do bear in mind that if you've got this fear, you're not alone. 20% of people have got the fear.
Right, yeah.
And so do go and get help, because the fear won't cure itself, I don't think, not without some sort of help, whether it be from a firm like Mark's or whether it be going on the course for £1,500.